Subsidy on premium motor spirits may have gulped up to 500 billion naira. That's with decisions by the federal government to leave the pump price of the product unchanged in the first 5 months since it announced the deregulation of the sector despite rising oil prices in the international market. The global crude prices have started to normalize, surpassing the $40 benchmark and a production level of 1.86 million barrels per day earmarked in the 2021 budget. Well, there seems to be a return to fuel subsidies era since the incessant increase in the price of global crude oil have pushed up the landing cost of imported fuel closer to the current prices of the products in Nigeria. Well, let's bring back our minds to the recent statement by the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Mr. Mele Kyari, who announced that there would be no increase in the ex-depot price of PMS in May, despite the increase in global crude oil prices. All of these policies seems puzzling, where the question of how do the government intend to sustain this controversy? Well, like I said earlier, Mr. Emeka Kabogu is a maritime and energy lawyer. He joins me live via Skype to talk more about this. Good afternoon, Mr. Kabogu.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I can barely hear you.
Oh, good afternoon. I can hear you clearly here.
Okay, I'll try.
All right. Okay, my first question will be, what is your reaction to the present state of our downstream oil and gas industry without the removal of subsidy? What do you make of what is playing out at the moment?
Without the removal of subsidy?
I said at the moment, we have not taken out subsidy. So what's your assessment of this large chunk of money that the NNPC has to pay every month?
Well, it's a significant amount of money that is bleeding away from the economy. The issue of subsidy has been overflogged over the years. And indeed, as at last year, I actually thought that we had turned the corner, but unfortunately we haven't. Where we are is that we've got petroleum subsidy, and petroleum subsidy, as far as I'm concerned, is really not good for the economy. So this discussion really, I think, will dovetail ultimately on three areas. I mean, I see it as being three important areas. There's what I call economics of subsidy. There's the transparency of subsidy, and of course, there's the politics of subsidy. These are three important aspects of subsidy, which I think we probably will have to interrogate a bit more to begin to get the sense of the implications of where we are.
Let me start with the first one, economics of subsidy. For a country that has borrowed so much, and we know where our debt level is at the moment, can we sustain this? Already the NNPC GMD says this cannot be sustained. So what does this mean for us as humans?
It evidently cannot be sustained. So at the OTL Africa Downstream event last year, it was announced that the country had spent in excess of 10 trillion naira in the last 10 years on subsidy. Apparently, it turns out that the country has spent more. NNPC has told us today that we're spending about 4.5 billion naira daily on subsidy. That translates to about 1.6 trillion naira every year on subsidy. These figures are mind-boggling. If not that we've been deadened to some of these figures by the sheer repetitiousness of them, these figures are enough to make the country start scampering very, very urgently to do something. So it is not sustainable. Now, let's say something about subsidy in this scenario. The subsidy is being utilized to sustain foreign economies. If it were that this subsidy were being deployed or spent ultimately within the local economy, we could say that, well, we could rationalize that there's some economic sense to it. But to the extent that this entire amount is shipped without a cent less outside the shores of the country, it makes absolutely no economic sense. And I, for the life of me, wonder where the government is getting the money from. Because as of today, the country is borrowing. As of today, the country has no cash. So I am at a loss as to where this money is coming from. So it's unfortunate, of course. I mean, most people have a very sentimental attachment to the issue of subsidy. It is said that subsidies are there and they should be there for the common man. They should be there as well the common man benefits. But these are not arguments which are economically sustainable. Okay? The question will be, the common man, how does the common man manage with kerosene? How does the common man manage with gas? How does the common man manage with diesel? Because in one way or another, we are all making expenditure on all these heads every day. Eventually, we will make heads of expenditure for PMS. How about the West African and other African countries, which are, without, I don't want to be derogatory, but which are, if we go by GDP alone, these are poorer countries than Nigeria. But many of these countries do not have subsidies. How are they coping? I assure you that we will cope, but we must make that economic decision to ensure that the broader elements of our work can be sustained. So if this money is translated or transferred to some other areas like healthcare, you can imagine what the impact will be. So from an economic point of view, the economics of subsidy, as far as I'm concerned in Nigeria, is negative.
Transparency is key, and government, the issue of trust comes in here. I've always talked about it, trust. So when we talk of transparency, or maybe people are expecting that whatever monies is gotten from subsidy, removal of subsidy, will be channeled, like you said, health and all of that. Another aspect of it is the fact that there's a belief that our products are also being sold outside the country, neighboring countries. We've seen videos flying all around saying Nigeria fuel is cheaper. So who is robbing? It's like a two-way thing. So where do we stand? What do you make of government giving that trust back to the people?
Well, the government-citizenry relationship is a two-way street. Government has expectations of the citizenry, and the citizenry, to a large extent, have to do all they can to conform with the legitimate expectations of government in a civilized society. But it's a two-way street, so the citizenry also has legitimate expectations from government. And one of these expectations is of transparency, of full disclosure. So if we're asking how the money is realizable from removal of subsidy will be spent, that is a legitimate question. But in the context of what you've said now, relating to products being shipped out of the country, that is also an important element of an important area where we need to shine a lot of light for transparency purposes. The PPPRA has come out to, the latest information from PPPRA is that about 80 million liters of petroleum products are trucked out daily from the various depots. These are official PPPRA figures, 80 million liters. MoMan, I've discussed with the executive secretary of MoMan. He says that about 82 million liters are trucked out daily. Unofficial figures are even higher. So I'll take the base of these statistics, which is that from PPPRA, which is put at 80 million liters per day. If you've got 80 million liters of products being trucked out every day from the Nigerian depots, my question to you is where are these 80 million liters going to? Do we consume that amount of products in Nigeria? I mean, we'll just have to deal with the statistics. The National Bureau of Statistics places its latest figures indicate that there are a total of about 11.8 million registered vehicles in Nigeria. Total, not active, but registered. 11.8 million registered vehicles in the country. An active percentage will probably be 30 to 40%. So, question is, who is consuming 80 million liters of products per day? The reality is that a lot of these products is being shipped out of the country, and it is only natural. By sheer business sense, arbitrage will require that if you've got products retailing for double that amount just in any of our borders, they'll come to Nigeria and buy their products. They don't need to spend foreign exchange in importing products from the refineries from anywhere. They simply come, or they simply have engagements with Nigerian collaborators who ship across their borders. It's simple. And it's the same that will apply to Nigerian retailers who know that they've got a big market outside the country. It's only sheer economics. So it is the responsibility of the government not really to pursue and go after those who are smuggling these products, even though that is important. But the best way to tackle this is by applying a simple economic sense. Economic management, which requires that you reconfigure the economics of the entire thing to ensure that you have value created locally. So you can kill several birds with one stone. Ensure that the market is deregulated. The issue of arbitrage and smuggling reduces. You've got immediate impact in terms of the local competition as far as these same products go, because it's reflates that market, ensures a lot more people are back in jobs. It ensures that the market becomes competitive in such a way that, the sourcing of products and the logistics of the operations become the elements of competition that it could eventually drive the cost down. And of course, you find that there's a lot more transparency overall. So as far as transparency goes, we need to be true to ourselves, because the very likely thing is that we have figures which are being bandied around, which are wrong, and if we want to get out of the mess in which we are, we need to be truthful to ourselves.
Now, we know clearly that subsidy is not allocated for in our budget. And we continue to shield this and, fend for this. I said, subsidy is not allocated for in our budget for this year. So how are we going to sustain? You asked that question earlier, but I think I'm going to ask you. So how do we now sort out all of these payments? And Labour is standing on one side, still holding on to government. What can really be done so that they can both be on a level playing ground and resolve all of these issues?
Well, the first question, how they're paying for it, I absolutely am not the right person to ask that question.
The NNPC.
Because it baffles me at the same time.
I understand.
Unfortunately, we've had the government flip-flopping, without any control in the last couple of months as to whether there is subsidy, whether there's no subsidy, whether there's deregulation or not. So even the government, I'm sure if you get 4 government officials to give you an answer, they'll probably give you 4 different answers. That shows the level of confusion which you have in government. It is actually an understandable confusion, because the government, the body language of Nigeria's president suggests that he wants to do well for the people of Nigeria by not increasing the price of products at the pump. But the question would be whether that is actually doing well for the people in the immediate term or doing wrong for the people in the long term. So how they are funding it, I've got no clue. But one may envisage 1 or 2 answers. It could be NNPC is bearing all the cost of import. NNPC also is the one exporting crude oil. It could be some kind of swaps going on. We do not know. I don't really want to start venturing into any assumptions. So that question is best put to the group managing director of NNPC at the time you discuss with them. How we can proceed going forward? Well, I think that the primary thing which needs to be done is to reduce sentiment and face economic facts. If we do, then what needs to be done? In fact, I think that even from a government point of view, many people have put this on the table of the president. Even from NNPC's point, the NNPC's body language suggests that NNPC knows that it is not sustainable.
Yes.
So the only thing here is that the Nigerian president is very, very sensitive about this. So solution is political will. And that takes me to the third issue, which is subsidy politics, the politics of subsidy. Just this, I think today or yesterday, but there's a news item in one of the newspapers, which reads boldly, APC declares that there will be no increase in fuel price in the near future. So it is the political party that has given us the policy position of government on this subject for the near future. Okay? Now, if you, I'm sure if you go through your news in the last couple of months, you probably would have heard the opposition party saying, blowing hot and cold at the same time. Same happening with this government when it was in opposition, indicating that it is wrong to remove subsidy or it is right to bring in subsidy. Now, these are all political positions, irrespective of which party is making that position. The position which should be of benefit to the Nigerian people is one which is anchored on facts, anchored on the long-term health of the country. And that position, in my point of view, will be one which is anchored on two things. One, totally deregulate this market immediately. Not lip service deregulation, but absolute total deregulation immediately. In doing that, put in place a framework to ensure that the deregulation adds value to the economy. One, within the structure, the market structure of the marketing companies. Two, within the socio-economic give back scheme of government. There must be sustainable ways to do this, and I assure you, Nigerians will get used to it, but it's the only sensible thing to do. Anything else will hemorrhage till death.
All right, almost finally, I would say, some will say maybe this is not the right time to take off subsidy totally, total deregulation, considering COVID and the effect on the global space.
There is never a right time. Before COVID, many people, Labour said that this is not the right time. At every point in time, it will never be the right time. Okay? It will never be the right time. We're in a recession, it is not the right time. We're recovering from a recession, it's not the right time. We're going towards some celebrations, it's not the right time. So there will never be a right time. But it is always the right time to do good for the long term. That's all I can say.
All right, I think it's a good way to leave it. And maybe if we can do this in 1 minute. Some say that, like we talked about trust, what are the quick wins that government could also do to help cushion the effect when this finally happens?
Well, many people have talked about the importance of local refining. I actually subscribe a lot to local refining, but local refining must happen under an atmosphere that you can build trust with the people. So recently, the government announced a contract of about $1.5 billion to rehabilitate the Port Harcourt refinery. But the numbers, the explanation of the numbers have not been forthcoming. So that is a very opaque approach to it, and it doesn't engender that trust which you talk about with the government. So from a refining point of view, yes, we need to encourage local refining, but under an environment of trust. That is one. Of course, the second one is that we need to actually show the value which is being given to the citizenry if indeed we remove subsidy. It is not by buying buses and distributing to some people and suggesting that is a way. If we do have legacy projects, and I've really not seen legacy projects coming up in healthcare. Healthcare is one of the most important elements of a country where you don't have social net. Healthcare, legacy healthcare projects. There's so many of them, but I just want to focus on healthcare. If we do have absolutely every penny from subsidy savings going into legacy healthcare projects, I think that would be a right way to go.
Mr. Emeka Akabogu, maritime and energy lawyer, thank you very much for spending your time with us this afternoon. We appreciate this.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right there.